Something hunts the backroads of Missouri, a ghostly orb that stalked locals for over a century. Witnesses swear it moves with a mind of its own, chasing cars, burning skin, and whispering through dead radios. But the most chilling detail: the more you try to see it, the more it sees you. Tonight, we uncover the terrifying truth behind the Hornet spook light, and why experts warn, if you hear it call your name, don't answer. Stick around, if you dare. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers before September 1st, 2025. Hit subscribe now or the spook light might visit you next. 1 Lemp Mansion. One night, a couple stayed at the Lemp Mansion for a romantic getaway, unaware of its dark history. They were given the old bedroom of William Lemp Jr., the heir to the Lemp beer fortune, who shot himself in 1922 after a life of tragedy. The room felt heavy, but they laughed off the warnings. As they settled in, the wife went to the bathroom. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her. She screamed, but her husband swore he never touched it. Then, the faucet turned on by itself, ice-cold water gushing out. She tried to turn it off, but the handle wouldn't budge. A whisper hissed in her ear, "Get out." She ran back to the bedroom, shaking. That's when they saw it. In the antique mirror, a pale man in an old-fashioned suit stood behind them, his hollow eyes locked onto theirs. The husband grabbed his phone to take a picture, but the screen glitched, showing only a black shadow where the figure had been. The room temperature dropped, their breath fogging in the air. Then, the bed started shaking violently, as if someone was underneath, pounding on the mattress. Terrified, they fled downstairs, where staff members just nodded knowingly. Others had seen the same ghost, William Lemp Jr., forever trapped in his misery. The couple left before midnight, refusing to ever return. To this day, they swear something followed them home. Footsteps echo in their hallway at night, and sometimes, the faint smell of beer lingers in the air, a cruel reminder of the Lemp Mansion's curse. 2 Exorcist House. In 2012, a group of paranormal investigators got permission to stay overnight in the St. Louis home where the infamous 1949 exorcism of Roland Doe took place, the real case that inspired The Exorcist. They set up cameras and recording devices, joking at first to ease the tension. But by midnight, the mood changed. One investigator, let's call him Mark, felt something grab his ankle in the hallway, a freezing grip that left finger-shaped bruises. Another heard a growl from the basement, deep and unnatural, like no animal they'd ever heard. The temperature dropped so suddenly their breath turned to fog. Then the knocking started, 3 loud bangs on the walls, over and over, with no source. The worst moment came when they played back their audio recordings. Beneath their voices, a raspy whisper hissed, "Leave him to me." It wasn't there when they spoke live, only on the tape. Then, one camera captured a shadow figure darting across the hallway, though no one had been there. The team packed up early, shaken. Later, they learned the house's dark history wasn't just a story. Priests who performed the original exorcism reported furniture sliding, unseen hands scratching the boy, and that same guttural growl, all signs of something far worse than a ghost. To this day, Mark refuses to talk about what else they might have recorded. But sometimes, he wakes up at 3 a.m. to the smell of rotting flesh, and the faint sound of knocking. 3 Missouri State Penitentiary. A few years back, a night guard at the old Missouri State Penitentiary was making his rounds through cell block 4, the most haunted part of the prison. He'd heard stories about inmates who never left, but he didn't believe them. That changed fast. Around 2 a.m., he heard shuffling footsteps behind him, like someone dragging chains. When he turned, the hallway was empty. Then came the whispers, muttering voices from the cells, even though the block was locked and deserted. His radio crackled with static, and a voice hissed, "Get out." The air turned icy. He shone his flashlight into one of the cells and nearly dropped it. A pale, gaunt face stared back at him from the darkness, eyes hollow, mouth twisted in a silent scream. Then it vanished. Trembling, he radioed for backup. But when the other guards arrived, they found something worse. His keys, which had been clipped to his belt, were now inside one of the cells, dangling from the upper bunk like someone had placed them there. He quit the next day. Later, he learned that cell block 4 was where they'd executed prisoners, and where one inmate, a murderer named George, had promised he'd come back the night they hanged him. Now, visitors on ghost tours report the same things. Cold spots, phantom footsteps, and sometimes, a raspy voice from the empty cells whispering, "You're next." 4 Pythian Castle. A few years ago, a paranormal investigator named Sarah joined a team to document activity at Pythian Castle in Springfield. Built as an orphanage in the early 1900s, the castle had a dark past. Children reportedly died there under mysterious circumstances, and later, it housed Nazi POWs during World War II. Sarah was setting up equipment in the basement when she heard it, the sound of a child giggling. At first, she thought it was a teammate, but when she called out, no one answered. Then came the whispers, tiny voices murmuring, "Play with us." The air turned so cold she could see her breath. She aimed her camera toward the sound. Through the viewfinder, she saw a small shadow dart behind a pillar. Her heart pounded as she slowly approached. That's when something grabbed her wrist, tiny, icy fingers gripping her skin. She yanked her arm back, but there was nothing there. Just 4 red marks, like a child's fingernails had dug into her. Later, while reviewing footage, she froze. In one frame, a pale, hollow-eyed boy stood in the corner, staring directly at the camera. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. When she enhanced the audio, she heard a whisper, "Don't leave us here." Sarah never went back. But sometimes, when she's alone at night, she hears that same faint giggling, and wonders if something followed her home. 5 The Elms Hotel and Spa. In 2015, a couple checked into the Elms Hotel in Excelsior Springs for a weekend getaway. They were given room 505, a beautiful suite with antique furnishings and a long history. The front desk clerk warned them that some guests reported unusual experiences, but they just laughed it off. That first night, the wife woke up to the sound of running water in their bathroom. She shook her husband awake, and they both saw the shadow of a woman through the frosted glass shower door. Thinking someone had broken in, the husband threw open the door, only to find the shower running at full blast with no one there. The next morning, they complained to management about the plumbing issues. That's when the clerk turned pale. "You were alone on that floor last night," she said. "We closed the 5th floor for renovations." Later that evening, they returned to find their bed perfectly made, with an old-fashioned hairbrush and hand mirror placed neatly on the pillows. Hotel security reviewed the hallway cameras. No one had entered or exited their room all day. At 3:17 a.m., they were awakened by a woman's voice whispering, "You're in my room." The temperature plummeted. The bathroom faucets turned on by themselves. Then they saw her, a pale woman in 1920s clothing, standing at the foot of their bed before vanishing into thin air. They checked out immediately. Later research revealed room 505 was supposedly haunted by a woman who died there during the hotel's speakeasy days. Housekeepers still occasionally report finding the bed neatly made with vintage toiletries arranged on the pillows, even when the room has been empty for days. 6. Zombie Road. One October night in 2018, 3 friends decided to test their courage by walking Zombie Road, the abandoned railway trail in Wildwood, Missouri known for its hauntings. They brought flashlights and cameras, joking about the legends of ghostly Civil War soldiers and murdered children said to linger there. About halfway down the trail, they spotted a teenage girl in a tattered white dress standing beneath a street lamp. She was barefoot, her hair stringy and wet, like she'd just crawled out of the Merrimack River nearby. One friend called out, "Hey, you okay?" The girl didn't respond, just stared with hollow eyes. When they blinked, she was suddenly right in front of them, her rotting breath hitting their faces. "Help me find my brother," she whispered. The friends stumbled back, their flashlights flickering. The girl reached out a skeletal hand, and vanished. Terrified, they ran back to their car. Later, when reviewing their photos, they found one that made their blood freeze, a blurred figure standing behind them in the trees, its mouth stretched in a silent scream. The timestamp showed it was taken exactly when they'd seen the girl. Local historians confirmed their horror. In the 1950s, two siblings had drowned near Zombie Road after sneaking out at night. The brother's body was found, but the sister's never was. To this day, hikers report seeing the girl appear beside them, whispering one question before disappearing. 7 Creckles Cave, Pacific. In 2016, an urban explorer named Jake decided to document the abandoned Creckles Cave Diner in Pacific, Missouri. A roadside eatery that closed suddenly in the 1970s. Locals warned him about something wrong with the place, but he went in anyway at midnight, camera in hand. The moment he stepped inside, the smell of old grease and cigarettes hit him, impossible after decades of abandonment. His flashlight revealed something worse. The counter was set with clean plates and a steaming cup of coffee, like someone had just been there. A radio crackled to life behind him, playing 1970s country music through dead air. Then he heard the voice. "Order up," growled a man's voice from the kitchen. Jake's blood turned to ice. Through the service window, he saw shadows moving, a tall figure flipping burgers on a rusted grill that hadn't worked in 40 years. The sizzle sounded real. The smell of cooking meat filled the air. Jake bolted for the door, but it slammed shut. The radio volume spiked, now blaring static. Behind him, plates crashed to the floor as unseen hands swept them away. When he turned back, the counter was covered in dust again, except for one fresh handprint in the grease, fingers too long to be human. Police found Jake outside at 3 a.m., shaking and babbling about the cook. His camera footage showed only darkness, but the audio clearly captured two voices arguing in the kitchen, then a final whisper. "We don't serve your kind here." The diner was demolished in 2019. Workers reported finding one intact coffee cup behind the counter, still warm. 8 Morse Mill Hotel, Morse Mill. In 2014, a history teacher named Mark rented the abandoned Morse Mill Hotel near St. Louis to photograph its decaying interior. The 19th century building had been closed since the 1970s, but locals whispered about strange lights still seen in its windows at night. Mark set up his tripod in what was once the lobby. As he adjusted his camera, he clearly heard piano music drifting from the ballroom. A ragtime tune that sounded distant, like it was playing through a gramophone. When he investigated, the music stopped. But the piano's dusty keys were depressed, as if invisible fingers had just been playing. That's when the whispering started. Dozens of voices overlapping, laughing, arguing, the clink of glasses. Mark spun around to see shadows moving across the walls, cast by no visible light source. The temperature dropped suddenly, his breath forming thick clouds in the air. He rushed to pack his equipment. As he grabbed his bag, something grabbed back, an icy hand brushing his wrist. Mark stumbled backwards, knocking over his tripod. The camera captured one last photo automatically, a blurred figure in Victorian clothing standing right behind him, its mouth open in a silent scream. When Mark showed the photo to local historians, they recognized the face from a 1923 newspaper article, a traveling salesman who had died mysteriously in room 17. The hotel's final guest. Now when people explore Morse Mill, they sometimes hear ragtime music, and report feeling something breathing down their neck as they take photographs. 9 The Fox Theater, St. Louis. In 2017, a stagehand named Carlos was working late at St. Louis's historic Fox Theater, preparing for the next day's show. Around 2 a.m., as he adjusted spotlights above the empty auditorium, he heard something impossible, a lone trumpet playing from the darkened stage below. The melody was old-fashioned, like 1920s jazz. Carlos shined his flashlight down. The stage was completely empty. But the music kept playing, growing louder, now accompanied by the faint sound of tap shoes. Then the spotlight he'd just secured swung on its own, illuminating center stage. The wooden floor creaked under invisible footsteps moving in perfect rhythm with the ghostly music. A cold sweat broke out on Carlos's neck when he realized what he was hearing matched exactly with a 1929 vaudeville act that had once played the Fox. An act where the lead performer collapsed mid-show and died backstage. Suddenly, the music stopped. The spotlight died. In the silence, Carlos's radio crackled with a voice that wasn't his crew chief's. "Encore," it hissed. When he rushed downstairs, he found all the stage doors locked from the inside. The security cameras showed something even stranger. For exactly 3 minutes, the footage glitched, showing only static while the stage lights flickered wildly on their own. Performers still whisper about hearing jazz trumpet solos in empty dressing rooms. Some find their sheet music rearranged overnight into 1920s setlists. And on certain nights, if you stand in the back of the empty theater, you might just hear the phantom audience applauding for a show that ended nearly a century ago. 10 Spook Light. In 2019, a group of teenagers drove down the dirt road near Hornet, Missouri, hoping to see the famous Spook Light. The mysterious floating orb that's been appearing there for over a century. They parked where locals said it always showed up, turning off their headlights to wait. At first, it was just a faint yellow glow bobbing in the distance. Then it started moving toward them, faster than any firefly. The light swelled to the size of a basketball, hovering right above their hood. One girl, Emma, rolled down her window to film it. That's when the temperature inside the car dropped suddenly, their breath turning to fog. The radio switched on by itself, blaring static. Then a voice cut through, "You shouldn't have done that." The light pulsed red. Emma screamed. The orb shot straight at her face. She jerked back as the car's interior lights flickered wildly. When they looked again, the spook light had multiplied. Dozens of them now surrounded the car, drifting closer like hungry eyes in the dark. The engine wouldn't start. Their phones died. For 20 terror-filled minutes, the lights darted around them, scratching the paint with invisible fingers. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, the lights vanished. The car started right up. But when they got home, Emma found 5 perfect burn marks on her arm in the shape of fingers, where nothing had touched her. Local historians told them the worst spook light stories always involve someone opening a window or door, inviting something in. Now when cars pass that stretch of road at night, some report their radios whispering the same warning.